We also have coffee mugs, if you're interested. It's okay if you're not. Just letting you know they're there. Number 79, the Perfumer Shield. It's hard not to sound like you're coping with a personal tragedy by defending this shield. You look at the astoundingly long list of negatives and try to shrug it off by saying, yeah, but it gives you 40 immunity. Cool, go break dance in a cancer pond then. This is how people act after they've been scammed. These are people who try to argue anything as long as it gets them out of admitting to themselves they just wasted 2 hours and 17 silver foul feet for a dumpster-sized load of cave moss that's going straight to storage at this point. Anything to grab onto that precious silver lining you think exists. This is the kind of shit you'd say in a news interview after a natural disaster. Well, at least I'm still alive. Bitch, your house is gone. Number 78, 77, and 76, and 75, the Sigiled Wooden Shields. In a competition of wooden shields versus heaters and kites, there's gonna be a clear winner almost every time. Defending against lightning damage seems to be the single major exception, but even other medium shields like the Black Leather Shield and Beastman's Jar Shield end up being incredibly efficient at absorbing lightning, and usually with a higher guard boost to boot. Fire damage is very frequently used against you in the form of pots, dragons, flaming crossbow bolts, golems, warhawks, one of the 59 different divisions of fire in this game, and in that regard, a wooden shield, especially ones this flimsy and weak, just ain't gonna cut it most of the time. It's hard to even tell if they actually meant for them to be good, too. You need a stone sword key just to get to the Hawk Crest Shield in Stormveil. Like, you tell me what I'm supposed to learn from that. Number 74, the Black Leather Shield. What is this even made of? Did Miyazaki commission somebody from Etsy to come and crochet a shield for us? This doesn't look like something I charge into battle with. This looks like a yard sale antique someone's grandmother hangs above her living room fireplace to look cultured. Even including the wide sweeping 1.14 patch that improved guard boosting across the board, this shield still gets the lowest guard boost of any medium shield and even ends up being lower than half the small shield lineup while still weighing 3 pounds. The guard boost patch evened out a lot of the discrepancies when it came to guard boost efficiency, so it's probably slightly less important than it was before, but a shield with defenses this low better be giving me some comeuppance of some kind, and I'm just not seeing it. Why are you giving the coolest looking items cardboard adjacent durability? Stop this. Number 73, the Red Thorn Roundshield. Something that genuinely bothers me is that we took tutorials from the man who writes these item descriptions. On February of 2022, millions of people depended on this person to introduce them to how the game works using only the written word, and he got away with writing shit like this. Boosts fire damage negation is a sentence that demonstrates action. It implies that an external effect is taking place, like the description of the Drake Talismans or an incantation. Not only do those rules not apply to the Red Thorn Shield, but it even goes as far as insinuating 42% fire reduction is something you should respect, like sitcom actors who tell a shitty joke and then stand around waiting for the applause. Interestingly, if the description is read a certain way, it heavily implies that the red thorn emblem is actually why the shield has the enhanced damage reduction. And I'm not the creative director here, obviously, but if putting stencil graffiti you bought from Amazon on a plank of wood somehow enhances its defense, I feel like that's important enough to bring up more than one fucking time in the whole game. Number 72, the Scripture Wooden Shield. Holy shit, I completely missed this in the first shield video I did, but this is actually a repeat offense of the same motherfuckery we just got through covering, and I think this one might be even more egregious. 45 holy damage reduction is far from impressive. It certainly doesn't warrant an entire line in its description dedicated to how fucking awesome it is. But last time I really thought about it, I'm pretty sure there's no implied or unspoken rule in the game that says a shield's physical make is able to determine its holy defense. Fire and lightning I absolutely understand. Fire burns wood, metal conducts lightning, fucking duh. That's the whole reason why the Red Thorn Shield having over 40% fire negation was such a big deal. But there's nothing in the game's world building that alludes to some connection between this type of shield and lower holy defense. So why say something about it in the description? What's the purpose of drawing attention to a rule that doesn't even exist? You put the two-finger cipher around the perimeter of the fucking shield, like I'm sure someone would have figured it out. Number 71, the Rift Shield. I don't think a single person gives a modicum of a shit about this shield. Nothing it offers is unique or different or can't be found on any other small shield you got by just playing the game and having it wind up in your backpack. Never really saw the sense in taking the Raging Wolf class out of the starting lineup. Having this shield immediately at the start would have probably been the only good thing about it, but now I have to march my ass across the castle over to a merchant in northern Liurnia and act like the blue Crest Shield isn't something I'm more interested in. Its placement at the very start of a journey would have been its one single benefit, and now it doesn't even have that going for it. Horrible lightning negation, horrible guard boost, weighs just barely more than I feel like it should, looks like a diagram in a doctor's office that explains how constipation works. but it gives you 40 extra focus. Go fuck yourself, who cares? Number 70, the Large Leather Shield. It's a slightly better variant of the Black Leather Shield with slightly better general reduction stats and 3 more guard boost. Its item description here is sort of supposed to clue you in on the fact that the laws of thermal conduction don't completely get ignored in the game. It's Elden Ring's way of pointing you in the direction of metal shields if you need fire and physical defense, but towards their neatly curated aisle of yoga mats if you find yourself lacking anything else. A standard the game continues to only remotely follow. If you didn't like the Black Leather Shield and its piss-poor work ethic, you're not gonna like this one either. Number 69, the Man-Serpent Shield. When you look at the sum of its defense, the Man-Serpent Shield looks staggeringly unimpressive. Give it a 4% base drop rate on a relatively uncommon enemy that proudly blocks entire R1 combos with it, and you've got the perfect recipe for one of the most maddeningly unrewarding creations of iron and failure to ever be offered to a living organism. Okay, well, it's not that bad. The fire negation's okay, I guess. It's good enough to stand out amongst other small shields, but that's really about it. I appreciate the physical negation uptick to 85, but again, this is only a result of the 1.14 blanket buff received by small and medium shields. Most of those changes were to their physical negation and guard boost. Small shields are certainly more manageable now, but when you look at others like the Gilded Iron, Ice Crest, even the Riveted and Blue-White shields, 85% physical negation starts to look pretty unimpressive, even by the current comparison. Number 68, the Riveted Wooden Shield. Alright, time to recite the Elden Ring mantra. Repeat after me. If it's to your detriment, everything works as intended. If it helps you, it's a problem that must be fixed. This is probably a mural somewhere in the FromSoft main office, accompanied with an overly detailed painting of the average player getting a spear up their ass. You wouldn't suspect much by looking at the sum of its defense, since it's mostly in line with what the average amount is for small shields anyways, but a very particular detail prevents this shield from defending against 2 of the game's most flexible damage elements, specifically the rivets in the Riveted Wooden Shield. I guess because the shield's physical makeup is both wood and steel, this translates to both its fire and lightning reduction being noticeably shittier than its competition. Funny, I don't remember the game being such a stickler for its own rule enforcement when they gave the Sun Realm Shield below 100% physical reduction, or the Smoldering Shield having 14% lightning reduction despite being a fucking brick. Number 67, the Pillory Shield. Taking an item with embarrassingly low stats and giving it the visual theme of public humiliation is the kind of humor that makes these games special to me. The magic and holy reductions are surprisingly competent here, and the physical negation uptick certainly helps it out with the whole being a shield aspect of being a shield, but 3.5 pounds is still massaging the line between small and medium. There are a few medium shields with better stats and similar guard boosts that end up weighing the same amount. For all intents and purposes, the Pillory Shield is a medium shield with body dysphoria. And no matter what size shield you end up comparing it with, the physical and fire negations still look pretty low regardless, so it doesn't really even matter that much. 50 vitality is also one of those bonuses I'm afraid to say is completely useless, because instant fucking death is a relatively major setback. But when I say I would have preferred a bonus that's more practical, I really don't feel like I need to explain why. Number 66, the Blue-White Wooden Shield. Anything that's blue usually gets good magic defense at least. Other than that, the stats are pretty terrible even after 1.14. I honestly feel like a lot of these physical upticks were just kind of pointless when it comes to small shields. I'd certainly rather have it in the 80s than in the 60s. I mean, if you're just handing out that improvement for free, I'll gladly take it. But smaller shields have always been pushed in the direction of either parry builds or Ash-dependent playstyles that may occasionally need to block a hit every so often. If I'm trying to make a guard counter build with the fucking Blue-White Shield, turning up its physical negation a bit isn't gonna make me look any less stupid. And that case can be made for just about any small shield. I'm grateful for the physical reduction improvements given to us by our overlords and all that shit or whatever, but that's rarely something I'll actually feel on a shield like this. Number 65, the Buckler. If you can't use the regular parries for shit, or you just don't like the objectively better golden parry and Carian retaliation ashes for some reason, the Buckler parry is your trusty sidekick, and I'm talking about the skill specifically. The shield itself isn't worth a Nebraska gas station piss, but the extra startup room on the Buckler parry means it's a classic that's here to stay, whether me and my dumbass Excel sheets like it or not. It's wonderfully easy to time, it feels right on just about every dex build, and the unique skill alone is more than enough to save it from being the left bookend on this entire list. That's not even a joke. These are legitimately some of the lousiest stats I've ever seen on a shield. I didn't know elemental reduction was even allowed to get this low. Number 64 and 63, the two Marred Shields. Do you like bleeding things with your Marred leather shield but wish it weighed more and had even shittier fire negation? Medium shields are less likely to be used for bumping fuckers since the damage can't quite measure up to great shields, nor can they apply status as quickly as smaller ones, resulting in everything these two shields have to offer just being ass-draggingly ineffective in the face of other early game options. The wooden shield spreads out its reductions a little more since that lack of fire defense needs to be compensated for somehow, but the sum of their defenses are ultimately very similar, as is their guard boost and bleed buildup. The only drop in the pool that seems to make even a small difference is the wooden shield weighing 1 pound more. Doesn't really matter, just save yourself the trouble and just move right along. Number 62, the Rickety Shield. You know what? It ain't bad. Well, I mean, it is. It is almost certainly a bad shield. But despite what the item description and my last shield video had you believe, there are some tiny parts here that can be salvaged. 1.14's buff to the guard boost of smaller shields brought the Rickety Shield up to a 46 and 74% physical damage reduction. Still oven-baked trash when compared to literally any other small shield post-buff, but the wide range guard boost and physical defense usually covered across all shields has kinda closed up a fair bit, leaving the Rickety Shield in a slightly less pissy state than before. It's also only 1 pound, opening up a small window for blue dancer builds, and making it the perfect shield ash holder for players that use Holy Ground or Vow of the Indomitable. You really have to force this shield to work, and I must maintain the exhaustive list of negatives here will absolutely put you in a less comfortable spot 99% of the time, but a 1 pound shield is a 1 pound shield, and sometimes that shit just works. Number 61, the Icon Shield. At what point are we going to stop saying regen builds are good at counteracting poison builds like it means something? Who the fuck uses a poison build to inflict poison? There's always a talisman buff or a detonation ash thrown in there somewhere that you should actually be worrying about. And deadly poison can chew through pretty much any regen build you can make anyway, so the strain of poison doesn't even matter. The best regen build in the entire game can put forth just enough effort to counteract standard ass poison and nothing else. Additionally, 95 physical defense and 65 guard boost on a Greatshield. And it takes Somber Stone, so you can't mess with the defenses by changing affinities. Yeah, no, this whole shield can just go fuck itself. Number 60, the Wooden Greatshield. I mean, it's shit, at least in the grand scheme. About as impressive as someone who spends 6 years and 120k on a college degree and then applies at FedEx. It's not impressing anyone, really, but that's not really its job. Most people are familiar with the call, the beckon. When you see a really cool looking strength weapon and you think, God, I wish I could pick that shit up, and that's how it starts. The Wooden Greatshield is a gateway into what feels like an entirely different game. It's lighter than any Greatshield, yet heftier than any standard shield. It alone stands as the boundary between the two. This is most likely where you first learn about some of the hidden advantages of Greatshields too, like an increased toughness rating that recoils attacks. However, and this might come up a few more times when I start talking about Greatshields, this is where 1.14 very suddenly stops looking like a good idea and begins to loop around and risk heading up its own ass. You can find the same or better guard boost on literally over half the medium shields in the game currently, and the ones of a harder make like the heaters and kites even give you 100% physical defense. 63 guard boost just isn't that big of a deal anymore, and with a lot of small and medium shields getting buffs in this particular department, the purpose of the Wooden Greatshield suddenly feels very minimized. Number 59, the Sun Realm Shield. That's some pretty awful fire negation for a shield that proudly wears a sigil of the sun on its face. Oh, so that graffiti bullshit worked fine on Red Thorn earlier, but I can't do anything with this? These stats make zero sense for a metal shield. 27% fire reduction and 40% lightning reduction. Why? Because shut your fucking mouth before I nerf that holy defense too, you ungrateful bitch. Also one of the few medium metal shields that can't climb to 100 physical defense, which is something I won't even attempt making an excuse for. But if your build is absolutely aching for it on the promised consort fight, and you somehow hiked all the way here without picking up one black steel Greatshield, then I guess the 70% holy defense on its sacred affinity can be marginally convenient, sometimes. Number 58, the Briar Greatshield. Stop giving Greatshields less than 100 physical defense. I don't care what your excuse is. We have a shield made of off-brand jello that weighs 8 pounds, and that shit can do 100 physical. The blanket buff to physical defense given to small and medium shields is kind of a step step towards admitting this, but I'm still not going to be completely satisfied with how things are until this and the Lordsworn Shield are brought up to a reasonable standard. Greatshields are also incredibly slow if you're using them for offense purposes, making the idea of a status buildup on a shield of this size a bit funny, but I guess the blood affinity gets 120 base buildup, so I'm sure you can make it work if you absolutely force it to. It's on the lighter side for a Greatshield, and if you're after that very particular advantage that comes with Greatshields where certain attacks just recoil off of you, but you don't want to haul too wide of a load, then that's where the Briar Greatshield comes in, I guess. Number 57, the Heater Shield. Remember that bit I had forever ago about stuff I called salt and pepper items that are only placed in the game specifically to give the world around it more color and immersion? Remember when that wasn't actually a bit? Remember that one time I pronounced the word awry as Ari? Alright, whatever. Anyways, yeah, that's what the Heater Shield is. Every other iteration of a Heater or Kite Shield measures up marginally better than the standard Heater on all accounts. Its elemental negations are ass, the guard boost is crap being forced out of said ass, and the one single advantage it's able to cling onto until it's replaced 15 minutes into a fresh run when you find the Beast Crest Heater is its 100% physical negation. That is the beginning and the end of what this shield has going for it. The list of Heater Shield benefits is bookended by the exact same line. Actually, it's not even a bookend, it's just one point. Barely even looks like a shield. I could probably fry eggs on this thing. Number 56, Crucible Hornshield. Fucking boring as shit is what this one is. How do you miss so many easy W's at once on this? There was so much room to give this shield some modicum, a sliver of personality or utility outside of just being an ugly red brick. It could have had a unique skill, it could have had a unique attack ID that lets the bash inflict pierce damage instead of strike, it could have boosted aspect incantations like the armor set, it could have had more holy reduction, more guard boost. The new shield strike ash would have been wonderful on this because of its high physical damage, but nope, sorry, somber weapon. Either use the bash or shut the mouth. It didn't even need to be a somber stone weapon. You could have just copied the affinity scalings from the Golden Greatshield or something and called it a day. You could have actually put less effort into making this shield and it would have ended up in a better spot. They know it's coming. You're better off just giving them what they want. No one would think worse of you. Some may even empathize with you.
Fine. Take the coward's path. Such is what's expected from your ilk.
Can you make a mod that resets frostbite? No. No more. Did you know this shield increases your robustness by 30? Number 54, the Round Shield. Half a pound heavier than the Heater Shield, somehow, and with only 94 physical defense and not the full 100. Sounds pretty hopeless on the surface, but if we take elemental damage reductions into account, you can pretty easily tell how this shield wants to be used. Having 50s on two separate elements isn't exactly rare, even for a medium shield, but since you can pick this up from the Weeping Peninsula merchant, it could be one of the first shields you ever find with those numbers. And it's one of the only early game shields that fares decently against both fire and lightning, which is really not the mic drop I was looking for. Like, that's honestly a pretty unimportant benefit in the grand scheme, but that's the hardest I can will myself to defend a shield that looks like an old movie prop. Number 53, the Lordsworn Shield. 67 guard boost for 10 pounds. Nope. Fuck out of here. Number 52, the Dragonclaw Shield. I'm not entirely sure where I stand on this shield's viability when looking at its stats alone. Of course, it's kind of bullshit we didn't get a unique skill for this, but recycling any opinion or take that's older than 12 months at any given time makes me feel insecure as a writer. So for the convenience of objectivity here, I'm just gonna say I don't give a shit. What I do give a shit about is the bonus damage it has against dragons. Specifically, its 30% boost against those of the non-ancient variety, of which there is no shortage of in the Land of Shadow. Of course, this couldn't be too strong, so I guess they decided to bottleneck its convenience by splitting its damage into two types, one of which most dragons are already pretty strong against. 67 guard boost is criminally low, especially for a Greatshield, but the 76% lightning reduction does net you an extra chunk of defense against DLC bosses like Bale and the Dancing Lion. It's honestly not as terrible as I think most of us want it to be. The visual make of this shield kinda looks like it was begging for a non-100% physical reduction stat like the icon in Briar Shields, so I feel like things really could have ended up much worse for this one. Number 51, the Carian Knight Shield. A shield so brilliant, so stylish, and so satisfyingly symmetrical that I honestly wouldn't even blame you if you didn't give a shit about its awkward negation split. Very unimpressive guard boost to weight ratio, and the expectedly shitty lightning defense. I think the best way, and probably the only good way to use this shield is to tune up a specific elemental reduction using the magic or sacred affinity, turning this into more of a specialty shield that'll be really strong against particular encounters. This unfortunately is the only way to get some good mileage out of this one, because everything else about it just gets left behind barely enough for it to be less preferable versus other medium shields. The weight seems barely too much, the guard boost feels barely not enough, and a shield can only throw its Sunday best at me for so long until I finally wise up and start making some build adjustments. Number 50, the Golden Beast Crest Shield. Did this get heavier? I mean, that would be a pretty odd variable to revise in a patch or something, but 12.5 really just doesn't sound right. There's room for this to perform as an elemental defense option by investing in one of the affinities, but that means you now have a 12.5 pound shield with below 100 physical negation. There's really nothing special at all about this one. I'm pretty sure there never was. The Golden Beast Crest was always boring, but it used to feel more like a safe, dependable kind of boring. Now it just feels like a you're always asking too much of me kind of boring. A man with a receding hairline and overdue rent whose favorite pastime is blowing ass into his gamer chair kind of boring. Number 49, the Jellyfish Shield. Wow, no one gives a shit about this thing anymore. Didn't the skill used to boost everything by 20? When did it become 12.5%? It only weighs 8 pounds and it still gives you a full 100 in physical defense. So congratulations, Jellyfish Shield. You've just been upgraded to slightly heavier medium shield. And its gelatinous form means it comes with some of the same drawbacks that a normal metal shield would anyway. So have fun with your 40% lightning reduction and a guard boost that just barely manages to drag itself past small shields that weigh like 2 fucking pounds. The further down this list I go, the more I'm starting to realize that 1.14 leaves no room for the lighter half of the Greatshield library to do anything of significance. If you want a Greatshield worth of shit, you'd better stack an extra plate on that barbell because it's either fingerprint or a fucking pizza box. Number 48, the Dueling Shield. 88 physical negation on a 9-pound envelope opener. Alright, FromSoft, I've tried opening a line of civil communication between us as many times as I have patience for, but I'm about to reach for my fucking belt. Being able to attack with an offhand shield is a nice novelty utility to have on your build sometimes, I guess, but strangling every other stat to death is just not really a fair exchange. None of the affinities really seem noticeably strong. The lightning and sacred affinities are decent, but it's probably not going to be worth the hit you'll take in guard boost. This is just another light great shield conundrum where all its stats vaguely resemble a really good medium shield, but with twice the baggage. Number 47, the Spiralhorn Shield. Your opinion on this shield's visual design is ultimately determined by where it's placed on your character. If you're actually using the shield and parrying people and shit with it, it looks pretty awesome and has a diverse lineup of armor and weapons you can choose from to complement its visual theme. If you wear it like a middle school backpack for the status resistance like I know most of you fuckers do, of course it's gonna look unsightly. It looks like a child's attempt at a hedgehog cosplay. I've seen some of you defend this in forums too. Half of you would be legging it through Mogwin's palace in a fucking wedding tuxedo if the game said it had bleed resistance. Like, what is wrong with some of us? Is 50 status resistance really even that important outside of PvP? That's like using your left hand as an extra talisman slot. Number 46, the Silver Mirror Shield. It's among the lightest shields with 100 physical negation, which essentially puts it in the unique obscure category of heater shield that's really good against magic damage and nothing else, and of course, shittier guard boost. It takes this shield at a full plus 10 to even start competing with the guard boost of other heater shields, and I would really like to say the extra magic damage could be useful when bopping things with the shield, but it doesn't come with any innate skill and can't be infused anyways. I tend to prefer this option on shields because it frees you up to use the Ash on your main hand weapon, which is usually going to be better, but like, why the hell is the magic damage even there then? Adding something like this to a shield that's very obviously not meant for an offensive purpose is just gonna make me turn back around to the heaters. But the magic reduction is pretty nice if you just really don't like Ghost Flame Dragons or Adula for some reason. Number 45 through number 42, the Red, Blue, Eclipse, and Beast Crest Heater Shields. When compared side by side, 3 of these 4 shields wind up with the exact same amount of total elemental reduction, and I'm really not sure if November's itinerary permits me enough time to write my 279th expansion on which of the 4 elements fucks your dad the hardest. They all share the same 100 in physical negation, and the guard boosts are close enough together that I feel perfectly comfortable saying you can just pick whichever one you want, honestly. If you're using a heater shield and a basic sword and board combo, the decision between the 4 is as simple as choosing your favorite design. And one of them has a fucking lion on it, so I'm putting that one in the front. Number 41, the Great Turtle Shield. 5.5 pounds. 94 physical negation and a guard boost that slightly trails most medium metal shields. That's alright, it's not what I call a grand entrance or anything, but the extra stamina regen is just barely enough for you to actually catch it in real time, being a little useful every so often. This is not a shield. It can be a shield if it wants to be, but on most days, it doesn't. It's a shield with a bachelor's in science that took a wrong turn somewhere in life and now it wants to dress up like a ninja and fight crime. We're starting to compare very minuscule details here as we head into the top portion of the list, but cutting the physical negation for 3 stamina per second sounds a little lopsided. The elemental reductions have me doing a big ol' what the fuck gesture like I'm signaling a field goal while getting tased in the nuts, and the regen bonus honestly feels a lot better with the shield on your back while two-handing something, and I have a tiny suspicion that wasn't its intended purpose. Number 40, Shield of the Guilty. I can't personally say I'll ever be in an adventurous enough mood to like this shield or even somewhat think fondly of it. I use the shield because it's a fucking shield. I want to do shield shit with my shield. Parries, guard counters, CCing fuckers off buildings, that's what I want to do with shields. And maybe that's my own problem to sort out with a therapist or something, but using a shield as a means of proccing status just doesn't feel comfortable to me. However, an opinion is an opinion, and no matter how turned off I am from a type of playstyle, the ultimate fact is this is compatible with Shield Strike, boosting its status applied per second in standard situations by a shitload. Too lazy to measure it, but having an attack chain on a shield with a weapon still in your main hand is a very obvious and significant improvement for status builds. The damage negations still make me want to start applying for jobs over at their office, but for bleeders, the new Shield Ash really does make a pretty massive difference. Number 39, the Kite Shield. It looks like most Kite Shields received a slightly more favorable improvement in 1.14 than the other various heater shields. I remember both of these being pretty close together, if not the exact same. And now that's no longer the case, since the standard Kite Shield ended up getting boosted to 69. The elemental reductions are a little low for 4.5 pounds, but it's got 100 physical, 69 guard boost, which is outstanding for a medium shield, and it's got a cute little design on the front of it. It doesn't try to steer you astray by throwing a bunch of weird, situationally useful effects at you, like giving you 2% damage versus garden gnomes or some shit. It's the Toyota Camry of shields. What you see is what you get, no refunds. Number 38, 37, and 36. The Manor, Inverted, and Crossed Tree Tower Shields. Nice. More high-quality seasoning for the immersion machine. Objectively worse than the Legacy Greatshields, but still just inches better than most mediums after the buff. No one with any more brain cells than senators in the White House considers them a favorite for stats purposes, but this one's green and has a fucking tree on it, so I'm using that one and you get to stop talking. Number 35, the Distinguished Greatshield. Ironically enough, the Distinguished Greatshield is kind of on the forgettable side as far as its stats go. If you were to put them side by side, it really just looks like another Legacy Greatshield from an area that never made it into the final game. It can stick its nose out just far enough to technically have more total elemental defense than most of the others that are commonly compared, but 76 guard boost is really not ideal for 17 pounds, when you can easily find either similarly weighted shields that are slightly better, or similar guard boosts on slightly lighter shields. It's sturdy enough to hang around for a while, but 17 pounds eventually does get cumbersome, and I'd rather be freeing that space up for a great shield I know doesn't have competition. Number 34, the Twin Bird Kite Shield. I don't know if this one should go above or below the standard Kite Shield. I've switched these past few around at least 9 separate times because I've torn between taking a more traditional approach, which is that a shield just be a fucking shield, versus admitting to myself the bootleg dollar store RTSR effect this shield gives you actually isn't that terrible. As far as shield effects go, it's probably one of the most useful. This also means all of the elemental reductions are noticeably worse than the standard Kite, and its guard boost trails by a point as well. Neither of these are deal breakers, since Kite Shields always have 100 physical negation anyways, such is their purpose, but 5% more attack and 10% damage reduction across the board at low HP isn't something you find at Goodwill. That bonus is almost good enough to be its own talisman, and we get to just slap it on our backs and carry it around with us. Number 33, the Shield of Night. Probably one of the most powerful unique skills of any shield at the expense of actually needing to build for it. You can barely block verbal threats at 49 guard boost, so the Greatshield talisman is pretty much required to supplement it to a point where it's actually usable. Used to only have 55% physical negation, which was then increased to 74 at 1.14. A huge improvement versus what we're used to, but comparatively still not that good. The real key to its power here is in the elemental reductions, and since the skill can be empowered by anything and not just physical attacks, it becomes the best small shield in the game for the purpose of counterattacking, which is a bar so low I almost tripped over it writing about it. Number 32, the Cuckoo Greatshield. When it comes to measuring the competencies of each legacy Greatshield, they're all pretty noticeably similar to one another, save for how their damage negations are split. But there's one that really just doesn't make any sense to me. Every component of this Greatshield just ends up being slightly less preferable than one of the others. It has the lowest lightning negation out of any of the other legacy Greatshields. The Eclipse crest has better magic damage negation, although just by a hair, and the guard boost on the Redmane Shield is 1 point higher despite its lower weight. I mean, it's still one of the more elite Greatshields in the game. It's probably a great option for anything, no matter what I say about it, but I would really only stick with this one if literally every farming attempt for the other legacy Greatshields gave me a handful of shit that just wasn't the shield. Number 31, the Gilded Iron Shield. With the 1.14 changes, I've had to reconsider a lot of what would be my favorite shield to go with in terms of efficiency, and the Gilded Iron Shield used to just be a bump in the road on my way to something better, if I even picked it up at all. Now, it's functionally a medium shield with better parries. The holy negation is expectedly high since it follows the whole everything gold is holy motif, and okay, can we just time out for a minute? This is the only game I can think of where spray painting a baking sheet with a certain color might actually make it a better baking sheet. What do your fish sticks get done 10% quicker just because some outer god is like, fuck, that one's gold. That's our team colors. We need to keep an eye on that guy. He's a real one. Number 30, the Redmane Greatshield. If you can get past the need to go on a fucking around expedition in Caelid for an hour just to farm it, the Redmane Greatshield is probably my favorite legacy Greatshield despite how inefficient it tends to be compared to most of the others. First and most immediately, 70% fire damage reduction just fucks outrageously hard, and it can be made even better with the fire affinity at just over 87. The magic affinity I can also see working for people just because the elemental reductions have a smaller gap between them that make the shield pretty well rounded. I wouldn't do it because elemental affinities tend to drain your guard boost by an unfairly large amount, but I do see the appeal of a decently light legacy Greatshield being kind of good at everything. Number 29, the Dragon Tower Shield. It's the heaviest of the towers, it's the sturdiest of the towers, and it has a fucking dragon on it. Once we get around to bulkier Greatshields, it's usually a pretty appropriate question to start asking yourself, just how important is guard boost? And the answer to that will be slightly different depending on your build, your playstyle, your personality type, whatever your horoscope was this morning, but it's an important question. Generally, a shield's unwieldiness can be excused as long as the stats are noticeably above the rest of its competition, but the guard boost on most of the other Greatshields are still a good deal more than enough to get to where you need to be. 75 guard boost on the Eclipse crest, for instance, no longer travels the mileage that it used to thanks to 1.14. The Distinguished Greatshield only trails by 1, but ends up being a half-pound lighter. And it's just at this point where I usually look at the Dragon Tower Shield's slightly, marginally more efficient stats and just go, nah. Number 28, the Erdtree Greatshield. Usually shields with a unique skill or some sort of gimmick end up drawing a shorter stick when it comes to basic stats, but I was surprised by this one. Not only can you enjoy the whole Return to Cinder gimmick that probably never gets old with a Discus of Light setup that involves you parrying your own bullshit, you can also enjoy it with a hefty 76% holy negation and 66 guard boost if fully upgraded, which honestly isn't that great. It's just a hair lighter than the other legacy Greatshields at 13.5 pounds, which explains the lower guard boost, but is just about the ceiling as far as holy shields go. It has the highest holy negation out of any plus 10 shield in the game, and the only ones that can top it without changing affinities are the Erdtree and Blacksteel Greatshields. Also some pretty impressive magic negation too. Number 27, the Spiked Palisade Shield. You like when things bleed? You like lifting heavy-ass shit? Well, here you go. Fulfill two of your fantasies at the same time. It's the only non-100 physical defense shield I'll ever even consider putting on the top half of the list, and that's because it's a status builder's flying castle. It's wonderful at what it does, it's only 11.5 pounds, and I'm already sick of talking about it. Number 26, the Thorn Roundshield. It's reliable, it can parry, it's got 51 guard boost, and it only weighs 3 pounds. It can be bought as early as the Coastal Cave 2 minutes into Limgrave. The lightning defense wipes a monkey's ass, and that's about all I've got for this one. I have places to be. Let's move this along. Number 25, the Inverted Hawk Heater Shield. Looking at how the stats total up, the Inverted Hawk is functionally a slightly enhanced heater shield that weighs 1 less pound, whereas all the other heater shields tend to have pretty large gaps in their elemental reductions with a concentration on 1 or 2. This one is much more comfortable and straightforward. 49s in everything except lightning and no cost to guard boost. Honestly, it's one of the greatest all-purpose shields for light builds who don't give a shit about shields. If you don't really care about what shield you need and you're just looking for something that'll keep your vital organs functioning, just pick this up in sheer forever and you'll be good to go for the whole game. Number 24, the One-Eyed Shield. Welcome, audience! I'm your host for tonight, and get ready to play another round of Where in the goddamn fucking hell does this even go? I hate shields that just don't know how to be shields, fucking Christ. They're some of the funnest weapons Elden Ring probably has available, but it makes for an awful rating system when it comes to actually filling out a list like this. It's significantly heavier than other shields with similar guard boost, to such an extent that even the Erdtree Greatshield has a higher guard to weight ratio. Its elemental negations are nothing special, but hey, there's a big fucking cannon down here I can shoot things with. How is this gimmick supposed to even fit into my formula? Am I expected to use a currency converter? What's the exchange rate between big fucking cannon and 1 point of guard boost? Does anyone know? Number 23, the Albinauric Shield. Jesus Christ, talk about a makeover. This medium shield is barely recognizable as its former self since 1.14. Not a lot about its core stats really changed, but the most noticeable improvement was in its guard. Up until this point, the Carian Knight and Mirrorshield were your only two reliable options when it came to magic defense mediums, and they both come with a lot of extra baggage like intelligence requirements, lower guard boost, and the Mirrorshield isn't even compatible with affinities. The Albinauric Shield is the solution to just about all those problems, since the magic affinity is capable of over 82% magic reduction without losing out on too much guard boost. But even if you don't want to do that, 66 is still a massive help, and the only stat that really pays for it is lightning, so... Number 22, the Gilded Greatshield. I'm willing to award a few points for being able to find it extremely early into the game, yet its stats seem to be a marginal improvement on most of the legacy Greatshields, but I'm not digging up a fuckatillion runes for 36 strength if I'm still in Limgrave. But once you do, it's another legacy Greatshield. Think of all the things you could do in 2 hours. You could catch up with friends, go to the gym, clean your house. Now I'm gonna farm knights and somehow still not get the shield. Number 21, the Ice Crest Shield. It was good before, and it's even better now. 87 physical defense and 54 guard boost, all in the nice compact size of 3 pounds. Throw a magic affinity on there and you've got magic defense most medium shields aren't even capable of. And we're just gonna go ahead and let that 40 extra robustness feel like it's allowed to sit at the big kids table this year. I don't give a shit about it, and I'm pretty sure no one else does either. But on a small shield this impressive, all the resistance bonus does is just add to something that's already pretty great. Plus, if you were to boost only one of my status resistances, I'm just thankful we landed on something that was actually useful. Number 20, the Golden Greatshield. Not every shield needs to come equipped with the latest tech expansion. It doesn't need wheels or an engine or a UAV. Sometimes a shield just needs to be really fucking good at being a shield. Exhibit A, if the Banished Knight shield didn't go far enough for you, and your muscle mass is so beefy your shoulders are practically fusing with your bicep, it might be time to upgrade to the Banished Knight of Greatshields. Incredible guard boost, well-rounded defenses that are competent against everything as a bare minimum, 85 holy negation on the sacred affinity, a little heavy set, but that's better off as a conversation between you and your own intolerance. Taking it to a full plus 25 doesn't look nearly as preferable though, since the guard boost tops out at 78, whereas most of the higher end medium shields tend to reach around 72 to 75 when fully upgraded. Even so, the holy negation can still dunk on Radahn's bronze polished ass, but all it takes is a solid comparison between 2 or 3 of the strongest mediums, and that guard boost to weight ratio suddenly looks pretty hard to defend. Number 19, the Ant Skull Plate. This great shield has a benefit most other great shields do not, which is a little something called hardness. Yep, go on ahead, get all your funnies out. Fucking 5th graders. There's no way I didn't make the same exact joke in the other video. I feel like I opened with the same fact and then told the same joke with like the exact same rhythm and everything. This is gonna drive me nuts. Fucking whatever. Tier 3 hardness. Repel great swords and great hammers just like you would any standard-sized armament, making it ideal for guard counter builds since enemies tend to just flail helplessly around for a second if their attack gets rebounded. It not only protects you against poison, it also inflicts it. 60 immunity and 90 poison buildup as a base. With this shield, you get to fuck around and they get to find out. Number 18, the Eclipse Crest Greatshield. Truthfully, the guard boost at plus 25 getting shafted like it did is of marginal concern. This is my favorite shield for blocking elemental damage because it might still have some of the best affinities in the game. It already stomps whatever magic negation the Cuckoo Shield thought was impressive just on its standard affinity, but the magic and cold affinities can lift that shit all the way to 90, and the sacred affinity does that thing where it kinda improves the magic damage too, just like a tiny bit, but even the fire negation still winds up being pretty okay. Half the affinities are pretty much one Scholar Shield away from turning your brain off and just blocking whatever you feel like. And the passive 50 resistance to everything is a nice addition when it's not shoving a registry of almost empty bars in my fucking face. Number 17 and 16, the Coil and Smith Script Shields. No one contested the Coil Shield being this high up in my last video, so don't fuck what ain't broke. The Coil Shield is not a shield. It's not only an offensive weapon, but a goddamn rattlesnake. A living organism with nothing separating it from winding up your arm except a wooden trash can lid. It's the proud owner of the single worst guard boost of any shield in the game by an embarrassingly large scope. 40 immunity couldn't protect you from a stomach bug, and it falls to the 5th lowest in terms of overall defense. But none of you give an AI-generated fuck about any of that because the unique skill inflicts enough deadly poison to one-proc most standard enemies. The Smith Script Shield actually ends up being a somewhat decent shield with well-rounded elemental defense. It's also the heaviest small shield at 2.5 pounds, so a slight boost to its stats is to be expected. It has no compatibility with infusions, yet still requires standard smithing stones, but 47 guard boost on a small shield is still within the upper range, and the unique skill on it is so resourceful and fun to use that its defenses could be written in fucking wingdings, and I still think it would take a day or two for half of us to notice. Number 15, the Scorpion Kite Shield. The elemental negations are about what I expected, but any elemental negation on a medium metal shield that's actually worth a high fructose fuck should be considered a promotion at this point. The real double take here is its guard boost, which is 57 on a +0 only at the expense of 4.5 pounds. The standard shields have officially jumped the border into Greatshield country and have subsequently flipped off the wooden Greatshield working at customs. This single maneuver right here by the balance team has taken the slender yet eloquent wooden Greatshield and repurposed it as the tavern's new dartboard. Additionally, we've got a 50% holy reduction due to the gold-hued Scorpion. That's I don't actually know that's probably not why. I'm just going by the game's track record, and usually that's the reason item descriptions toss around. The Gravelstone Seal even says you're allowed to worship the Erdtree and dragons at the same time just because lightning is gold. So you tell me what I'm supposed to glean from that. The holy reduction is better because the Scorpion is fucking gold. Prove me wrong. Number 14, the Mesmer Soldier Shield. Never has any medium shield in the history of any FromSoft game been this well-rounded both defensively and visually. All of its elemental negations are exactly the same down to the last decimal point, not a hair off of each other whatsoever, and if it were any rounder in shape, I would be confusing it for a Zildjian ride symbol. This also goes above the two aforementioned DLC mediums because it's capable of the same amount of guard boost while being 1 pound lighter. This is a medium shield you throw on when you're not sure what the correct decision is. It's the Pearl Drake talisman of medium shields. The item description also comes in with a helpful nudge of its own saying it's the largest metal shield of its class, which I'm pretty sure is just there as a hint so you can entertain the idea of using the shield, because it's only debatably larger than either of the Crest Shields that weigh 1 more pound each, and it's absolutely not larger than everyone's favorite Dorito chip that's going to be about 30 more minutes up the list. Number 13 and 12, the Black Steel and Erdtree Greatshields. Alright, so I don't think anything in this next paragraph is going to have some profound new findings that settles an argument or something, but speaking solely in the interest of efficiency and nothing else, the Erdtree Shield is still the better choice, much to my dismay. In the competition of holy negation, Black Steel is far and away from the rest of its competition, and even further so when you consider its ridiculously high 105% holy reduction on its sacred affinity. But in the effort of being as fair and objective as possible, 1 extra pound for marginally worse stats on every other front makes for a pretty easy choice to make during almost any standard situation that doesn't involve sunbeams being shot down my throat and out my ass. And it honestly really sucks that I have to say that, because Black Steel just looks so much cooler. The old hit him with a car door one-liner has made its due rounds in many of my scripts, but now the time has finally come where I get to knock fuckers out with the passenger door of a Malibu. Number 11, the Golden Lion Shield. 64 guard boost on a +0 shield that weighs only 5.5 pounds is... I don't even have a joke for that. Horseshit is what that is. It is tom-fucking-foolery that I can find shields over twice this weight with less stability. I don't need to tell a joke about 64 guard boost on an unupgraded 5.5 pound shield, because the content of the situation itself is funnier than any zinger I've got in my head right now. It gets significantly higher strength scaling than any other medium shield, with 108 scaling, separating itself from other common medium shields by a full letter grade. Actually, no, most Greatshields have 90. I think this might be the single highest scaling a shield has ever been given. We bitched so hard about how imbalanced and unfair Greatshields felt versus their alternatives that we willed this into existence. Better unupgraded guard boost than half the Greatshields, and it's tied to an asset they repurposed from Radahn's fucking kneecap. We don't get to not claim responsibility for this. This shit is our fault. Number 10 and number 9, the Wolf and Serpent Crest Shields. Use the Wolf Crest for magic, use the Serpent Crest for fire. There aren't too many major discrepancies on one versus the other. How the elemental reductions get divvied up is probably the biggest difference, but the Serpent has 74 guard boost versus the Wolf's 73. The Wolf gets around 79 magic negation on a magic affinity, and the Serpent gets the exact same amount of fire negation on its fire and flame art affinities, so no real winner there either. And they both weigh 6 pounds. I can see people being compelled to make decent arguments for either shield, especially since they both look fabulous as fuck. But if you've played through the game more times than you've said hi to your parents, chances are you'll be min-maxing everything, which is where the Serpent Crests, I think, just barely comes out on top. Number 8, the Beastman's Jar Shield. It used to be great, it used to be amazing in fact, and now it's so top shelf that it could fall and kill a person. 3 of the 4 elemental reductions above 50%, lightning being its main focus, very affinity friendly that doesn't affect the physical defense that much, and a guard boost that, well, it doesn't suck. The Jar Shield is a solid answer to just about anything. 53 guard boost on a shield that excels literally everywhere else is the kind of clock in whenever the hell I want to sort of energy that demands respect from its peers. The physical and poise damage on it is also absurdly high for a shield, but this ends up being balanced out by its low innate scaling. It comes readily equipped with fucking zilch, which is exactly how I like my shields, so I'm at full liberty to use my main hand skill. If you're using a Scholar Shield build, the low magic defense is brought exactly to 100%, while everything else hovers around the 80s and 90s. Not ideal for guard counter builds, sure, but that's really the only glaring negative you have to deal with. Number 7, the Banished Knight's Shield. Maybe using an oversized planchette from a giant Ouija board got boring, or maybe you just thought getting the brass shield was incredibly non-challenging and wanted something harder to farm. That's not a single person has used the Banished Knight Shield for that. I'm probably just gonna delete that. Cut that out. Edit that out. No matter the reason, the Banished Knight Shield is still not as good as the brass shield, or at least that's what the numbers reflect anyways. I wasn't really expecting this shield to lose out on every single stat versus brass. Even if a shield is 1 pound lighter, there's usually some small exception that still makes it more preferable in a random situation. But there's nothing here. This is just the brass shield with better lore and a cooler visual theme. Every one of its affinities trail by just 1 or 2 points of negation outside of lightning, which looks exceptionally awful. The farming experience is extremely dull because the easiest spot to farm it in consists of a single banished knight you just respawn over and over again. But with all else considered, I guess the one advantage it does have is that it's slightly less cumbersome weight. So if that's important to you, then put this shit down and pick up the blue gold kite instead. I just realized I gave the shield 7th place and I'm making it sound like it abused me in high school or something. Like, it's good. If you wind up with it, don't get rid of it. It's still good. Number 6, the Carian Thrusting Shield. It's 10.5 pounds and gives you 94 physical negation, so at first glance I didn't see myself standing in line at midnight waiting to snatch it off the shelf or anything, but as far as the 2 dueling shields go, the game throws in as many hints as it possibly can to show you this is absolutely the one you should be investing in. 77 guard boost is fondling the balls of the upper Greatshield range while weighing what it does, and it gives you some of the most flexible affinities of any shield in the game, since the intelligence scaling is always going to be there no matter what. If your stats are right for it, two-handing this shield can be the centerpiece of some of the game's most incredible guard counter builds, doing Verdigris Shield damage on something only 1/3 of its weight. The guard to weight ratio still isn't as impressive as the golden standard of medium shields, but when you remember it's a dueling shield and immediately go to test a guard counter build, I'll wager that you very suddenly stop caring. Number 5, the Visage Shield. I don't care how cool the skill is or how mythical tier the fire negation is. I'm just glad I found a great shield with great offensive capability that still knows how to be a fucking great shield. Designed with an absurdly heavy weight, yet clearly communicating to its user that equipping it means you probably don't need a weapon anyways. Scholar Shield seems to match this one really well too, since you'll be completely blocking both magic and fire damage and still hang around the 90s against lightning and holy. Any guard or stamina booster works well too, since the unique skill puts you in the blocking position. It's inconveniently heavy to such an extent that I can't entirely fault any average player for immediately being disinterested by it, but Tongues of Fire is truthfully a madly underappreciated skill, and it has the second highest physical damage output on a +10, only trailing the Verdigris while being 4 pounds lighter. Number 4, the Fingerprint Stone Shield. Seeing the Fingerprint Shield remaining this powerful even after 1.14 just makes it clear that there is still One massive advantage Greatshields will always seem to have over their physically challenged kin. No matter the discrepancy in guard boost, the highest elemental reductions will always come from a Greatshield. Fingerprint, Visage, and Erdtree Crest all have one elemental defense hovering around 80. A Sacred Blacksteel is capable of reaching over 100 in Holy Negation. The Fingerprint can reach 100 on fire with the Fire and Flame Art infusions. Various affinities on the Legacy Greatshields can climb into the upper 80s and sometimes more on a particular element. And whenever someone says they need a good barricade that can make Holy Rays disappear faster than a video criticizing Mr. Beast, a Greatshield will be recommended 100% of the time. I was approaching this list with a generally positive attitude towards 1.14 because I was just glad to see them actually buffing something to try and solve a problem for a change. But as I've continued the script, I've felt myself slowly rotating towards the exact opposite direction. Now I just feel like the patch devalued all Greatshields except the ones that were actually bullshit. Number 3 and number 2, the Blue Gold Kite and Brass Shield. The medium shields are starting to send out their heaviest hitters, and it seems just about all of the Greatshields don't stand a chance. You're still in an okay spot using a Legacy Greatshield or something really off the beaten path like Visage, but there isn't much that can compete with 58 guard boost on a 5-pounder. The mediums are making a statement with these two, and I'd even be compelled to admit favoring this one over the Brass Shield during the early game due to its lower weight. But the Brass Shield still has higher elemental defense overall. 3 more guard boost is just barely significant enough to actually care about, especially when you start looking at affinities, and 16 strength isn't a lot. If you're already built for the Brass Shield, you might as well just go ahead and take it and maybe leave blue gold as a backup option if you need to trim something down. Also, that tangent I went on about golden inlays indicating a higher holy reduction, I'm just gonna, now this doesn't mean what I said was wrong, but I will do my due diligence and say if that rule is being applied here, it's a little more difficult to see. It's all I'm saying. I'm just thankful we got a medium metal shield with actual standards when it comes to lightning negation. Number 1, the Verdigris Greatshield. Okay, we need to talk about this thing. Holy shit. Firstly, the damage output. At 49 strength, it is miles past everything else. At 60 strength, it's even better. At 80 strength, why the fuck even use a sword? That's almost 700 AR, not including talismans, crystal tears, buffs from incantations, or any other misbehavior you feel up to. Exhibit B, the guard boost. 90 guard boost on a +10, giving it the highest guard boost on any shield anywhere in the game. Even capturing footage for this, I was floored by how little stamina I was losing during blocking. The bottlenecked stamina regen you get from continuing to hold up the shield still had no problem compensating for whatever was lost. You want a guard counter build that'll eat the DLC alive in 15 minutes, swallow a deflecting tear, pick a spot, hold up your fancy car door, and just fucking wait for something to happen. The deficit in elemental negation wasn't even something I'd noticed right away. Like, the extra stability I was getting just felt way more important. Sure, the unique skill is just a dumb rejection recolor that needs way too much FP, but if my whole strategy revolves around dropping something really heavy on my target's useless dumbass head, a little crowd control probably isn't too bad. On the Fingerprint Shield, you can swap out the Ash with no skill to default to the Ash on your main weapon, but the Verdigris Shield is your main weapon. Having achieved and maintained total market control over Big Shield for more than 2 years, the Fingerprint Shield has been indisputably, embarrassingly usurped by a sturdier, lighter, harder hitting, and much more physically attractive contestant. Goodbye, Fingerprint. Though you may be forgotten, the trauma you caused will always be felt.